Hello and welcome. It's time for Campaign Chronicles, France 24's regular countdown to the presidential election here in France. Our French politics editor, Mark Perelman, is in the studio with all the latest. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
After a brief hiatus due to these Toulouse shootings, French presidential candidates are now very much back on the campaign trail.
Absolutely. The campaign has resumed. Some would argue it never really stopped, and it resumed in no uncertain ways. But we just have to rewind because today is interesting. At 11:30, the special police forces finally go into the apartment and end up killing Mohamed Merah. 2 hours later, President Nicolas Sarkozy addresses the nation from the presidential palace, the Élysée, with a call for unity. Let's take a listen to President Sarkozy.
France has shown composure and determination. The country remained unified and united. Today, the French must overcome their indignation and anger.
So this was around 1:30 this afternoon, and 5 hours later, Nicolas Sarkozy, the president, had morphed back into Nicolas Sarkozy, the candidate. He was holding a rally in the eastern town of Strasbourg, where he talked mainly about the need to reform Europe, but he also talked about the tragedy and warned those who might want to use it. Let's take a listen to candidate Sarkozy now.
I'd like to say that these crimes were not committed by some madman, because a madman is irresponsible. These crimes were committed by a monster, a fanatic. A monster who's capable of finishing off in cold blood a wounded man and a little crying girl in a school playground. This crime serves no cause whatsoever, political, religious, or human. This crime damages all causes.
So conservative militants were obviously pumped up seeing Nicolas Sarkozy on the campaign trail again after seeing the gravitas of the president for several more days. Here's the report from our Clovis Casalis, who was on site in Strasbourg attending the rally.
The campaign has resumed, and Nicolas Sarkozy here in Strasbourg appeared more than ever ready to fight to get re-elected, attacking his rivals, the socialists, the far right, of course. During his speech, first and foremost, he wished to pay tribute to those police forces who helped put an end to the killings in Toulouse and Montauban. He said there was zero tolerance for those who attack the Republic, and he announced two measures. He wishes to punish those who visit regularly websites praising terrorism, and he also wants to send to prison the French citizens who go abroad to trend with fundamentalist groups, a firm message that seemed to please UMP supporters here in Strasbourg.
There is a lot of emotion. He's going back to the principles of the UMP party. He's talking about what France is, the basics. Today, we felt carried by what he said, and I support him 100%.
Nicolas Sarkozy came here as president, but also as candidate, a candidate who has a lot more to offer, he said, adding that he needs the UMP supporters to be fully behind him in order to build a strong France.
So one thing we got from that, Nicolas Sarkozy is very much occupying the political space today. What about his main rival, François Hollande?
Well, François Hollande, who has been a little bit paralyzed for the last few days, also just after the raid was over, gave a very short remark saying, he was pleased that it ended the way, paid tribute to the police and to the families of the victim. But tonight he was in Aurillac in central France, and he talked very much about the need to reinforce the Republic, and he made no secret. He said that the right was always good at teaching lessons, but never learning from them. He said also that those who claim the left is too soft on crime, on immigration, on terrorism, are not telling the truth. So clearly very determined. François Hollande, who also responded to those new proposals, law proposals from Nicolas Sarkozy, saying they were essentially not useful.
There are laws. They exist. Our penal code of justice was reinforced more than once to fight against threats. What counts are the means used to put the laws into effect. These means must be given to the appropriate agencies so that they can follow people that are identified as dangerous.
And Mark, it wasn't just the big guns sparring today. Their henchmen have also been trading barbs all along.
Yes,
really.
They really
never stopped.
They never really stopped. They said, okay, there'll be a period of grief, and we won't attack each other. But clearly, they've traded barbs, and quite vivid ones. The right, the conservatives, have attacked the socialists for being soft on crime, on immigration, on terrorism, and the socialists have really hit back. The leader of the Conservative Party, Jean-François Copé, in the UMP, said, just imagine if the socialists had been in power, what would happen? And the socialists said, you can't just talk like this. This is just nonsense. And so they've also felt the need to say, we would be tough as well. And so you had after several days of silence, at least on the web or in the email boxes, we've been flooded today with statements from the campaign attacking each other, and they're of course accusing each other of not respecting the death and the families of the victims, saying, you began. It's in a way very childish, in a way quite sad, because they had promised that we would see them raise above the fray, but clearly this is not happening. The presidential campaign is there's still 1 month to go before the presidential election. And whatever it takes will be done by both camps.
It's really a bitter fight. They didn't manage to stay as dignified as they had promised. Finally, you've got the latest polling numbers.
Yes, it's an interesting poll from the BVA Institute. The two favorites are still ahead, François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy, more or less around 30 to 28%. François Hollande slightly ahead. The really interesting thing is the number 3. It's Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's the leader of the so-called Left Front, which is a coalition comprising the Communist Party, and he has been on the rise. But this is the first time he vaults in 3rd position in front of far-right leader Marine Le Pen.
Indeed, that's interesting. It's the first time we've seen her in 4th position.
Yes,
she was polling very well.
Yes, and also centrist leader François Bayrou. Jean-Luc Mélenchon was in 5th place, and he was not long ago under 10%. Now he's polling at 14%. He's been really on a roll because he's proposing a very clear hard left platform. He's very good on TV. He's extremely skilled in rallies, and there is something happening there. So the big question is, who will it hurt? Will it hurt François Hollande, who's on the left with him? There's an argument to be made that François Hollande is losing little ground and this might hurt him. However, Jean-Luc Mélenchon has said repeatedly that if he doesn't reach 2nd round, he says, as they all do, that he will reach the 2nd round, but in case, as is likely, that he doesn't get there, he will indeed call his supporters to support François Hollande. So in a way,
so it could be a reservoir of votes.
Exactly, a reservoir of votes, and which is the big problem of Nicolas Sarkozy. He doesn't have such a reservoir because the votes are spread between the center and the far right, and to reconcile both is really a very difficult task. But he's not out, especially because the tragedy in Toulouse, as we've repeatedly said, is going to help him. Let's wait for the polls to show that.
Nicolas Sarkozy today appearing as both the president and the candidate. Mark Perelman, our politics editor on France 24, thanks very much for being with us. And thank you for watching. That was Campaign Chronicles. Do stay tuned. Live from Paris continues. After a quick break, we'll get a fresh news update, including the latest on the aftermath of that siege in Toulouse. The suspect, Mohamed Merah, going out there in a hail of bullets. Mohamed Merah shot this Thursday, the man suspected for killing 7 people in France over the past 2 weeks. Stay tuned.